when we look at your game, we see that backstory authority, and it is pretty much still the Doomsmith's capacity. In fact, it's a good one because the player can say, my business rival is looking to take me down. My business rival is determined to take me down. That's a great concession right there, right? My business rival is determined to take me down. I know that if I can choose that concession, which is situational authority, my business rival, is going to be on the job now, imminently. But you as Doomsmith always have power over what that business rival is like, where they're coming from, what they're pissed about, how flexible they are because of that, anything. All the backstory is Doomsmith stuff. Always, as far as I can tell from your role, from your text. Situational authority is Doomsmithy, except when paths and concessions are brought in as choices. And even then, it's still the Doomsmith's option to even raise that choice. I don't know if you let a player suddenly go, ooh, I want a concession now. This one. I don't know if that happens or not.
No.
So it's still the Doomsmith's choice to say whether they've got the choice, and then the player chooses which one. Right?
Sometimes they come in. Sometimes they come into play. There's not a choice. It's like, this is also happening.
Right. But that's all Doomsmith stuff. Right. So the player is involved as if not a junior partner, but as a sometime partner in situation creation. Authority, right? So those two things are differently parsed. Outcome authority, Havoc is the arbiter, and it is the Doomsmith who typically has authority over what Havoc is about, right? Fail, success, right? Now there's a little negotiation there. You're checking whether you go with it. So there's a bit of the player gets like to put their option in as a partner in a very fixed way.
Yeah.
And then narration authority, Doomsmith. Now we bring in malversation, and we realize that those last two is where the player gets more authority than usual, both over the context of the Havoc and the narration of how it all plays out.
Right.
And that's cool. But now that we've got that all set up, and like the image of it is in our mind of how the authorities work in this game, bearing in mind, of course, that there are hundreds and hundreds of other ways to do all those variables that we see across all kinds of role-playing games, right? Fine. We're doing this role-playing game. Now we go to and I think I didn't dictate it or even state one way, but at the moment let's sort of stick with the idea that paths and concessions are pretty well understood, right, in how they relate to these things. Now let's go to all those other things, of which there are many. Things like Tragic Figure, things like Doombringer, things like, there's a bazillion of them. Which ones cause confusion over the authorities? Should any of them play an authoritative role at all? Or are things like that better off kept as modifiers or relevant to Havoc, and let Havoc do its job? Most of them are just relevant to Havoc, as far as I can tell. And therefore offer no confusion. As far as I can tell, most of them are like that. Some of them sneak over into outcome authority. And the question is whether you want that. The answer might be yes, but if so, then that needs to be called out as its own special thing, because that's a big change in the interrelated subroutines of play.
Right.
You've already got a really nice structure for your authorities, especially with a little clarification of certain things. Mm-hmm. And you don't want other procedures coming in and sort of muddying the waters. You want your subroutines to be truly subroutines, not suddenly becoming super routines.
Right. I see that.
Yeah.
I see that. I think that's just clarifying authorities and how the books are, how they're used and how they're formed, I think will really help.
It's what I need. I mean, this is exactly the brick wall I ran into as I started to set up the playtest, which I keep promising you. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to do it, but I ran into this wall and said, we've got to have this conversation. And so I have at least a pretty functioning idea now about what, you're after, so I can work with that. I wanted to mention another game. I said I was going to talk about 2 games in regard to maps and, character and stuff like that, situations. It's called Reign, not as in the weather, but as in sovereignty. And it's got 3 elements to it that kind of give it its identity as a game. One of them, which isn't that important for our purposes, is called the one-roll engine, where the same, kind of roll is used. A single roll resolves lots and lots and lots of things. Okay, that's fine. But that's neither here nor there. I want to talk about its other elements. Its other elements involve very intensive ways to make choices about your character and what they do. It's very elaborate. When you make up a character, you do a lot of trade-offs. They can do this, they can't do this, they can do that, they're good at this, they've got a specialty in that. It's extremely customized per character, what your character is good at. And that's important because the way the game is put together is that you actually make a band, a group, a squad, a team, and that team's fortunes are treated as a character from session to session to session. So you're playing your character in the team during play, but in terms of the game master in particular taking the group through things, they've actually got variables that change and develop and stuff like that for the squad as an entity. So far so good. Mm-hmm. The third element of the game is the setting. And the setting is freaky as shit. There is an infinite ocean, and there are 2 land masses which look like sculptures in the ocean, as if they were lying in a shallow water. So they're partly exposed statues of 2 people, a man and a woman. And they're in positions. They're not just lying supine. They're in position. So like one's elbow is up out of the water, one is kind of sitting up, one is leaning back, stuff like that. And these are continents. So you live like, on the cheek, right? That's where your land, and it's really fucking weird because, as you go toward the water, if you go down toward the water, you actually see the water coming at you like a wall until you get there, and now you're flat on the water. And he's got like the different regions. There's a joke, one of the exposed armpits is a jungle, stuff like that. But the idea too is that like there's one arm that's like, I think the man's arm is reaching across and actually lying on the side of the woman. So there's actually a big bridge, right? But gravity works all the way around. So you can actually ride around the arm. Right?
That is freaky.
Yeah. So the whole thing's just freaky as shit. And there's different ecologies and different cultures and different places and stuff like that. you can see where I'm going with this, right? You've got your character as a component, as a skilled specialist component of the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got this world with all of its freakiness, right? Guess
Mm-hmm.
how much character creation has to do with anywhere in the world? Nothing. It's really, really distressing to make up your character and feel like you're done, and then go to the setting and suddenly realize you have no idea how your character relates to that setting.
Mm-hmm.
I've never understood how to GM Rain. How am I supposed to relate this team to this setting? And shouldn't we know that before they start to make up characters?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the reason that's kind of weird is that Pelakar, the one I mentioned before, has multiple authors. So I can at least see how these different aspects of the game might not actually be connected to one another. Whereas this one has a single author. And to this day, I am baffled as to how on earth those two things could be coexisting in this text without any procedural connection between them.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about with your game is I'm not asking for the most detailed setting in history. I am asking for some procedural connection for me to know.
So now the one thing that it says, and maybe and so help me maybe understand what more you need, because the one thing it does say under each of the when you're reading the cultures, it does have direction. So it'll say north. Here's who's in the north. Here's who's in the west. Here's who's in the east. Here's who's in the south. And then these people are just kind of wandering around. So is making a little shitty map
much better than northwest southeast?
Yeah. Is I mean, but is a map enough?
Actually, I think that the danger is that a map, once you get a little too detailed, becomes too much. There's a sweet spot. For purposes of a game like this, it's not the same for every game. But for the game, given everything else you've got, there's a sweet spot of me being able to say, I'm from the coast of these people. Here's the city with the world's biggest gladiator arena. And all the other cities in, this region each have one, but this is the big one. Over here, there are no gladiator arenas. They don't have that. So if I'm a gladiator over in that other area, I can say I was a gladiator back there, but I can't be one here. They don't have those. So that level actually gives context to me making up a character and for us knowing where we are, that makes me, the Doomsmith, much happier in saying, okay, now let's write books. You are an ex-gladiator, obviously, because you're over here. Or we're over here. Now write your books. And one of his books might be, I want to get back to the arena as quickly as possible because I was the champion. If I don't get back there soon, they're going to forget about me. Or somebody could say, I'm never going back there. I escaped. I'm never going back there. So in the second guy's book, he could put out as a concession, the slave hunters, the escaped slave hunters from the arena city are, they lose no sleep. They waste no time tracking me down. I was a big deal. I was hot property. I escaped. But one of my concessions is the slave hunters are on my trail. Do you see how knowing where you are relative to where you're from and your upbringings really just makes the books pop?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
And the person could say, well, I just feel like this whole ex-gladiator thing is just cool, but I don't want it to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. I'm taking nothing. None of my paths, none of my concessions have anything to do with that. It just made me what I'm good at, and I get to have cred, drinking with the rest of you about how I was an ex-gladiator. But it's not going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to put it in the paths and concessions now. But now we know that.
Yeah, I see.
So that's really what I'm kind of after, is enough context for the books to jump into place so that our situational, what I call positioning, where my character is relative to the other characters and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The books can really help me and don't just add more mud into the water of positioning.
Mm-hmm.